Welcome to the Inventory Professional Podcast, brought to you by InventoryBase, providers of industry-leading property inspection software, accredited training, and on-demand property reports. Join us as we discuss the latest news, legislation, and all things property, hosted by our very own inventory expert, Sian Metcalf. With regular special guests, listen in to our open and honest discussions about the role of the inventory professional and how to navigate through this ever-changing, fast-paced industry.
Welcome to the Inventory Professional Podcast with me, Sian from InventoryBase Academy. I'd like to welcome Melissa from MGN Inventories. Hi, how are you today?
Hello, I'm good, thank you.
Right, so today's topic is very much a hot topic, and there is a pun there, and I apologise, especially if everyone's going, oh, really? But as we all know, or as a lot of people will know, the government has announced that they're going to try and ban, or they are going to ban, house coal and wet wood by phasing it out. So this is the fuel used by open burning or closed burning stoves in a lot of households. I mean, I don't know about you, but I come across them quite a lot, especially based in Bournemouth and Portsmouth. They seem to be quite a feature for near enough all the houses we go in.
Yes, I mean, I see them less being mainly city centre, but I do, sort of the larger houses that I see, it's very much a trend. It's a very popular thing to have them now, so...
Oh, there's nothing better than being sat in front of a nice log fire, etc. It really does make such a big difference. I've got one of those gas ones, so it kind of looks like it, but it's just pure gas.
Just not quite the same.
It's not. I mean, as soon as I ever go into a pub or open a house where, where there's a log burning fire there, I'm straight there.
Yeah, it's lovely.
The gap, I'm in there. I want to be as near to it as possible. I don't care if it burns,
Yeah.
It's hot, I don't care. I just want to be there. There's always something nice about an open burning fire.
Yeah, very comforting.
It is, especially if you've got a hot toddy with you as well. That's always nice. So this has been put into the press about burning these fuels, and the reason that they're saying that they need to do this is because there's a pollutant, a PM2.5, and I'm not going to, for one, say that I know exactly what all that is, but I do understand that it's something that gives off particles. It can get into your lungs and blood, and can cause serious health problems. So clearly, there's a need for this. This is not a knee-jerk reaction to anything that we're seeing in regards to changing lettings and legislation and health and safety as such. I think there's a clear need there to obviously reduce both our carbon footprint, but also looking at the health and safety aspects of having an open burning stove or solid wood burning unit or coal burning unit. But one of the things, I don't know about you, Melissa, but when I first saw the article, I thought, 2021, that's a real close kind of timeline to ban them all. And it wasn't until I started reading the article that I actually got the full picture. What was your first impression?
Yes, exactly that. I kind of thought, even when they say things are sort of 2021, that comes about so quickly. In terms of managing it and getting things ready, it feels like it'd be really quick. But like you say, after looking into it more and seeing it's starting from 2021 to 2023, at least it's giving that sort of, it's a good amount of time to get things in order.
Yeah, certainly from an editorial point of view, they want headline grabbing kind of content, and my immediate thought was, wow, that's way too quick, and they're banning it. I mean, stoves have got to come out. What's that going to mean for us as inventory providers? And then I read the article a bit further, and like you said, it's going to be phased out, but they're not actually saying you can't use them. What they're saying is you've got to use a different type of fuel. So instead of going for wet wood, you've got to have dry wood, so that they're going to be more controlled. And obviously coal being banned is a major initiative for the government from a carbon footprint point of view. So when you're looking at the detail, it's kind of makes a little bit more sense, and it doesn't mean that you can't use a stove or you won't be able to use a stove, but equally you're going to have to be looking at different and better fuel sources that are better for you, the person, and also for the environment as well. So it's kind of like starting to make a little bit more sense. And I think that initial, that's not a really good idea, and how are you going to do it, to right, I get it now.
Yes, exactly that. And I think sometimes that is the issue with headlines like this. You know, it's very sort of sensationalized. And I thought exactly the same thing. But are they going to be telling people to whip out all the wood burners and all of this, and then you see more and you sort of think, oh, okay, it's just that you're saying, you know, find better alternatives essentially.
Exactly. So my thought was, okay, what does that mean for us as inventory provider? Because as we were saying when we first started, you know, this is something we come across a lot. We see these solid burning fuel units, stoves. You know, some of them are open fires, but majority of them are now stoves. And what does that actually mean for us as clerks? You know, what do we do? You know, is this something that we have to be aware of, or we need to even, you know, in inverted commas, police?
Yes, exactly. Whether that would be the sort of thing that we would need to say, you know, for example, safety devices on blinds, where we would have to say this is present, and you know, and that would be an issue. So you know, it's good that it is actually just finding alternative sources, as it were.
Exactly, yeah. So I think we still, as inventory providers, we've still got to make sure that we do all our normal safety checks in regards to, one, detailing the item and stating that it's there, also whether there's a carbon monoxide alarm situated anywhere nearby, whether that's emitting an audible tone, which is part of our health and safety checks. And if it isn't, it should be, because it falls within line of the health and safety for in regards to smoke and carbon monoxide alarms, making sure we've covered all of that and we've captured it, saying where those alarms are in the property, whether they're emitting a audible tone or not. I mean, I don't say working because I feel the word working potentially gives the wrong impression, saying that we're saying that those units are safe to use. Yeah. What kind of technology do you use?
Yes, so I would say sort of an audible tone noted rather than working. I think, you know, back from my days when I was working in property management for agencies, so they did something similar with gas safeties. So it used to be a gas safety certificate, and then they changed it to a gas safety record to say this is the record of it at this one time, rather than it's a certificate that it's working, you know, fully working all the time. So that, you know, that carried through with me again, that you don't necessarily want to say that. Because all we are testing is for the audible sound. We're not actually testing that it is working.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, when you think about it, I always like to take things very back down to the base level. We are only testing it or pressing the test button as same as what a tenant would do.
Yes.
So, I mean, I always advise tenant to check them every 2 weeks, and obviously they're responsible for replacing the battery if it dies and it's one of those units that's not closed in, like a fire ranger, which is closed in, that has a lithium battery. If it's not, then they're responsible for replacing those batteries. If not, then quite rightly the landlord should be replacing that. But I always say to tenants, you know, every 2 weeks, it's for your health and safety, make sure you test them. And certainly at interim we test them, and we also test them at checkout, because then that's giving the landlord or the managing agent the heads up that not emitting an audible tone, that they've got time to get it fixed and or replaced, or actually put in place if there isn't one pre-existing, as there should be.
Yes, and actually, so, you know, surprisingly on that note, the amount of tenants that I found during inspections where I say to them, do you test your alarms? And they're like, oh no, you know, they just completely forget to do it. I think it's on your mind when you move into a property,
yes,
but not so much when you're living there. I always check on inspections and show them what to do, but the amount of people I've come across, it just kind of, it slips their mind, they forget to do it.
Yeah, no, do you know what? That is totally my experience, as well as the amount of people that insist that we check them at the point of check-in, which is quite right and is part of the law, that you know, the alarms have got to be emitting that audible tone. I think the actual law, and I'd actually have to double check this, says it's working, which again, like I said, is a bit of a grey area from our point of view, but certainly emitting that tone. And then they insist on that, and quite rightly, and they sign to say that within the report or your check-in report, especially if you've got a standalone one aside from the inventory, but certainly should be in the inventory. But like you said, then afterwards, that's it. It just doesn't even get thought about, you know, until, to be honest with you, often until the end of the tenancy, or it bleeps and it's trying.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. Or until it bleeps, and then all of a sudden they sort of think, oh, you know, what's going on with this then?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I've got a very much a personal story in regards to working alarms, or alarms that emit an audible tone. My son recently bought a house. They had an alarm, went to work, everything was fine. A little while later, got a call from a neighbour, your alarm's going off, pops back home, and they had an electrical wire. It wasn't plugged in, but it still managed to ignite itself, created a load of plastic smoke, very dense black smoke, which, if someone had been there, it could have been very, very harmful, if not, tragic. And it completely damaged the whole property. And then now in redoing all the plaster, redoing all the house, because everything got damaged by this smoke.
Oh my goodness.
And they wouldn't have known unless they had this alarm. And yet, when he moved into a rented property, I went with him and looking at the property report, and the provider had missed the fact that there was no alarm on the first story. So it's like a maisonette, so you should have one down on the bottom story, the first story, and one on the second story. They didn't have one on the second story, and the one on the bottom story didn't work. And the report said that there was no tone, or it actually said it wasn't working, but then the agent didn't do anything about it. So, which I can't quite believe in this day and age, when all this information is out there, that people aren't paying attention to what is actually quite an easy thing to manage in regards to having the device, pressing the test button, getting that signal or alarm notification from it, and making sure that that's tested regularly. It's not a difficult thing to do. The alarm basically saved the property, although they've got a hell of a lot of work left to do. And that I can't believe that some people still don't have alarms, and also the fact that as we inventory properties, that some properties still don't have them, and that the tenants don't regularly check the alarm by just push button testing it, which is effectively what we do.
Yes, and takes 2 seconds for them to do, for such a big impact.
Yeah, exactly. So for anyone listening who has an alarm, definitely double check it today. Make a bit of a note on your phone or your calendar to check it every 2 weeks. It literally takes seconds, but it could mean the difference between your life, damaging the property, and everything that goes with that. So I would definitely advocate doing that on a very, very regular basis. And then, that takes us back to what this article was about, is the fact that, all the solid burning fuels emit all these toxins that could potentially get into our lungs, our blood, etc., plus also an environmental impact as well. But all through this, well, how does that affect inventory services? I mean, from your point of view, Melissa, do we need to know? Does it make any difference?
I think it does, in terms of us providing a better service to agents and landlords, for us to be aware of what's going on, and to possibly pull up any red flags if we do see on an inventory massive piles of coal somewhere, to maybe flag that as being an issue. I don't think there's much that we need to do sort of day-to-day changes, but it is sort of the awareness around the situation and making the necessary notes, like you mentioned. I mean, we do anyway with the carbon monoxide alarms, close by, in close proximity, and that kind of thing. So it is really just keeping on top of things.
Oh, absolutely. I think awareness is the key word, because if we're aware as providers, we can advise our clients, the agents, the landlords, and also the tenants when we're checking them in. Especially if landlords trying to be helpful, providing, as we often find, the baskets of kindling and wood, etc. Because it looks nice, doesn't it? It really does look nice. It makes the place look homely, and you're trying to be helpful. But there needs to be an awareness about what they can and can't use. And I think obviously as we go forward, this is literally just the first start of the notifications. There's going to be hopefully more awareness coming out. There's going to be tenant and landlord advice, because certainly I would say from a fitness for human habitation point of view, it does fall into their category 1 in regards to making sure that the tenant is safe, to make sure that landlords are held accountable about the type of stoves that they provide, any advice or guidance that they provide within that, especially in the information packs. Do you see many information folders in a property?
I do, yes. I think that they're becoming a lot more common now. Though in years past I haven't seen so many of them, but there's been a real sort of trend of them now, and landlords trying to be actually much more helpful and covering a range of things, whether it just be appliance manuals. Now sometimes I see lists of local doctors, dentists, play parks, lots of things, local schools. So I think that there's definitely a trend of people putting more and more information in, and perhaps if the landlord's trying to be helpful about the sort of things that you can burn in the stove, that that maybe needs to be updated if they are saying coal and wet wood. That's something that perhaps has been there for a few years, needs to be redone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a huge advocate of the more you know, the better prepared you are. And plus also from a landlord point of view, it means then you're mitigating the risks as much as you possibly can. At the end of the day, it's down to a tenant as to what they potentially use for these stoves. But if you give them all the advice and guidance that is possible, including providing the stove that is being cleaned, is maintained, is safe, you've got the carbon monoxide alarm in the correct place and in an order where it emits an audible tone, then there's not a lot else you can do. Everything then becomes the other person's or the tenant's choice as to then what they do further. But certainly from a risk point of view, a landlord can mitigate a lot of that risk and create a very safe environment for a tenant, which is what they should be doing, by just letting them know these are the rules, or these are the advice, and this is the guidance, or this is where you can get it from. And I certainly think from us as providers, having that information like we do with smoke alarms, with blinds and cords, etc., in our disclaimers, and also then highlighting it again on the report, we're helping the landlord do that, but also helping the tenant to understand that this is important and they should be aware, and just giving them, like you say, all the information possible to make an informed choice.
Yes.
So with that in mind, I think that really covers that particular topic. But I think it's very interesting to see exactly how it's going to be policed, as it were, going forward. What information and advice will come out, whether things will change between that date, between 2021 and 2023, I don't know. But it'll be interesting to see. But I think it's certainly a positive change legislation-wise, purely for the health and safety of the tenant, the landlord, us as visitors, because we're going into the same kind of property, and also for the environment as well, because I think certainly from our point of view, and certainly my point of view as an inventory provider, I want to lessen my carbon footprint, which is one of the reasons why all of our reports are online. Do you use a similar service?
Yes, so my reports are uploaded to the client's individual portal. I know people still download and print them, and that's something that I think people will always tend to do, certain agencies, but it's trying to take those steps to at least do the bit that you can.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we can do a lot as providers, as part of our service, to make that whole process as easy as possible. Sharing the report, making it easy for tenants to comment online, upload all their pictures online, which they can do with InventoryBase. But it said it helps towards that carbon footprint. At some point, hopefully, I'll get round to getting an electric car, but unfortunately, their battery life isn't enough for the kind of mileage I do. I don't know about you, but I do a hell of a lot of mileage between jobs and clients and reports,
yes, exactly. And I think that the charging points as well are not as frequent as they need to be. So again, the worry with that would be that you would have to travel some distance to get to one, and then possibly have a few people trying to use it, and it take a certain amount of time. I mean, it's definitely a step in the right direction, isn't it? But it needs to be better access for everyone before it could be really viable.
Oh, absolutely. Well, maybe it's another topic of discussion for another podcast. I hope you've enjoyed our chat today, and look forward to meeting you on the next Inventory Professional podcast. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Inventory Professional podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, subscribe to our podcast now and share the love. This podcast was brought to you by InventoryBase, providers of industry-leading property inspection software, accredited training, and on-demand property reports.